Okay, lesson 4-4, multiply a decimal by a whole number. For the solve and share, a car travels 1.15 kilometers in 1 minute. If it travels a constant speed, how far will it travel in 3 minutes and in 5 minutes? Solve this problem any way you choose. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can use addition. So if we know what we already know is it travels 1.5 kilometers in 1 minute. So if in 3 minutes, how far will it travel? So what are we going to do with that information that we already have? We're going to triple it. So you could use addition if you choose. Oops. And you can add that all up. And you can do the same thing for the 5 minutes. You could add it all up, or you could use multiplication. So 1.15 times 3 minutes. We're going to treat the digits as if the decimal wasn't there. 5 times 3 is 15, carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4, and 3 times 1 is 3. We've got 2 digits in decimal place value in problem. We'll put 2 in the answer. And let's use some of our mental math strategies. If we were to round this or estimate it, we would leave the 3 alone and change the 1.15 to 1. So our answer should be around 3. This is a really great time to be using those mental math strategies just to make sure you put your decimal in the right place. So we have the next part was 1.15 times 5, 25. 5 down, carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 2 is 7, and 5 times 1 is 5. 2 decimal places in the problem, 2 in the answer. Let's use our estimating. The answer should be around 5, and it is. So that's one way we can do it. And again, like I said, if you felt like adding 3 times, you could do that. 5, 10, 15, 4, 3, and you can add, because that was 3 times, now we have to add 2 more times to that. So I can actually take that total there and add 2 more, and that would give me a total of 1.15 added 3 times. So you could do that too. So that is a couple ways you can do it. Using addition or using multiplication, because these are smaller numbers. Either way is fine. And how can addition be used to answer the questions above? And we kind of just showed that in how we answered it in the 2 different ways. How do you multiply a decimal by a whole number? The ticket price to a minor league baseball game increased by 17 hundredths of a time last year's ticket price. If last year's price was $26, how much is the increase? So we're going to multiply last year's price, $26, by 0.17. And if you're actually doing the math, like the algorithm, you just treat it as if that was 17 times 26. You find your answer, and then you use place value patterns to help place the decimal point. Since 1.7 is 1/10 of 17, and 26 times 1.7 is 1/10 of 442. Since 0.17 is 1/100th of 17, 26 times 0.17 is 1/100th of 442. And that sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but watch this part down here. That's what I've been talking to you about. There are 2 digits in decimal place value in the problem. Here's the actual problem right here, from up here. And the only 2 digits, there's a 1 and a 7. So the factors have a total of 2 decimal places. They both happen to be in one factor, but there's a total of 2 decimal places, so the product has to have 2 decimal places as well. So that is really what you want to remember. This is why it works, why that little trick works, but this is what you want to remember. Count the number of digits that are sitting in decimal place value in the factors, and that's how many digits that will be sitting in place value, a decimal place value in the product. All right. Here are two similar problems. So you can see this is why you can see the first problem is just whole numbers. They went through and found the value. The second problem, they wrote out the decimal, but they get the same value there, 627. At the end, they put the decimal point in. And in this case, one of the factors has 2 digits in decimal place value. So I'm going to put 2 decimal place values in the answer. 7 is in decimal and 2 is in decimal. All right. And you can always watch the video on Sabbaths to review that. What is the difference between multiplying a whole number by a decimal and multiplying two whole numbers? Well, remember when you're multiplying anything that's part less than 1, you're going to have an answer that's less than the original factors there. But keep in mind that anytime you're multiplying any decimal value, this isn't 1, it's greater than 1, but it's less than 2. So keep that in mind. And when you're multiplying a whole number by a decimal, you count the decimal places and place a decimal point in the product where it belongs. So you have to remember to put the decimal back in. Place the decimal in the product. That's the most important thing. If you're multiplying with decimals, don't forget you probably have a decimal in your answer. Occasionally you won't, and I'll show you how that works. 9.8 times 2. So we're just going to treat it like it's 98 times 2. We used a distributive property. And we have 196. But remember, we actually have a little decimal point in there. It's between the 6 or the 9 and the 8. So we have 1 digit in decimal place value in the problem. We need 1 digit in decimal place value in the answer. That's really hard to see there. So we wind up with 19.6. In number 4, it's kind of like we're doing 67 times 8. So 7 times 8 is 56. 8 times 6 is 48. 48 plus 5 is 53. But don't forget we had a decimal in the problem, so we have to go back and put that decimal in. So the decimal was at the beginning. So there of 6, 7. So there were 2 digits in decimal place value in the problem, 2 in the answer. So we have 5.36. And number 5, remember, you should be doing this in your notebook, nice and neat. So if your parents want to look at your work, they can be sure you didn't do it on a calculator. You actually did your work. For this one, I'm going to set up my problem differently, make it easier to multiply. I'm on number 5, yeah. I have 34 times 5.3. I'll just leave it like that. That's fine. So I'm going to use the distributive property. 4 times 3 is 12, carry the 1. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. 5 times 4, and remember, we're going to slide over 1, put a 0 in to annex that space. 5 times 4 is 20. The 0 down, carry the 2. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 is 17. 2, 0, 8, 1. And we have 1 digit in decimal place value in the problem. We're going to have 1 in the answer. And if we wanted to do this, use some of the strategies that you learned in the previous lessons to try to see if that looks like a reasonable answer. If we round that down to 30 and that down to 5, we have 150. So we know we're going to have a 3-digit answer. So our decimal is in the right place there. And so we have 180.2. So for number 6, some space over here. Number 6 is 4.6 times 21. 6 times 1 is 6. 1 times 4 is 4. Annex that 0. 2 times 6 is 12. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 9. 6, 6, 9. How many digits are in decimal place value in the problem? There's 1. So we're going to have 1 in the answer. And if we were trying to figure this one out, we would say, round that to 5 and that to 20. So my answer should be around 100. And does that look reasonable? Yes, it definitely does. So 96.6. Now here's the one I want to move. Remember, we can, because of the commutative property of multiplication, you can move your factors around if it makes it easier to do the algorithm. Do that. So for number 7, I have 0.6 times 15. I'm actually going to put the 15 at the top and 0.6 at the bottom. I'll still get the same value. 5 times 6 is 30. Carry the 3. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 3 is 9. Sorry, my screen is kind of wonky over here for some reason. So I have 90, but that's not my answer because remember, you have to go back and place the decimal point. That's like the most important thing. You have to place the decimal point. We have 1 digit in decimal place value in the problem. We'll have 1 in the answer. So our answer is actually 9 there. You don't have to write 9.0. You just write 9. There is a decimal place and a 0 after it, but I can just show it as 9. And then for number 8, 55 times 1.1. Use my distributive property. And go and insert my decimal. Remember this one, if you're thinking in your head, I should have about 50 times 1, so it'll be about 50. And you can see I have 1 digit in decimal place value in the problem. I should have 1 in the answer. My answer is 60.5. And when I rounded this to 55 and this to 1, I was coming up with an underestimate. So 60.5 looks reasonable. So there you go. That's today's lesson, multiplying decimals. And don't forget to place that decimal point back in. Remember, you can use your times table chart if that'll make it a little faster for you as you're going through these problems. If you're stuck on some of your math facts still, get that times table chart out, and you may use that. So you can go into your buddy work or your book work, and then follow up with your quick check. Thanks.